Okay, I was in the middle of something about blood and guts in this first chapter of An Unsuitable Job for a Woman, and I have to get back to it because it was great. So where am I here? Okay, Bernie had just written a letter, supposedly, and Cordelia has found him dead. Let's see where we are here. Okay, let's see. Okay, he lay slumped on a desk, over the desk as if in an extremity of exhaustion. His right hand was half clenched and an open cut-throat razor had slithered over the desktop, leaving a thin trail of blood like a snail's track, and had come to rest precariously poised on the extreme edge of the desk. His left wrist, scored with two parallel cuts, lay palm upward in the enamel bowl which Cordelia used for the washing up. Bernie had filled it with water, but it was now brimful with a pale pinky liquid, smelling sickly sweet, through which the fingers, curved as if in supplication and looking as white and delicate as those of a child, gleamed as smooth as wax. The blood and water had overflowed onto the desk and floor, soaking the oblong of garish rug which Bernie had recently bought in the hope of impressing visitors with his status, but which Cordelia privately thought had only drawn attention to the shabbiness of the rest of the office. One of the cuts was tentative and superficial, but the other had gone deep as the bone, and the severed edges of the wound, drained of blood, gaped cleanly like an illustration in an anatomy textbook. Cordelia remembered how Bernie had once described the finding of a prospective suicide when he was first on the beat as a young constable. It was an old man huddled into a warehouse doorway who had slashed his wrist with a broken bottle, but who had later been dragged back to the reluctant half-life because an immense clot of blood had blocked the severed veins. Bernie, remembering, had taken precautions to ensure that his blood would not clot. He had, she noticed, taken another precaution. There was an empty teacup, the one in which she served his afternoon tea, on the right of the desk with a grain or two of powder, aspirin perhaps, or a barbiturate, staining the rim and side. A dry trickle of mucus, similarly stained, hung from the corner of his mouth. His lips were pursed and half open like those of a sleeping child, petulant and vulnerable. She put her head round the office door and said quietly, "Mr. Pride is dead. Don't come in. I'll ring the office from here." The telephone message was taken calmly. Someone would come around. Sitting beside the body to wait, and feeling that she needed to make some gesture of pity and comfort, Cordelia laid her hand gently on Bernie's hair. Death had as yet no power to diminish these cold and nerveless cells, and the hair felt roughly and unpleasantly alive like that of an animal. Quickly, she took her hand away and tentatively touched the side of his forehead. The skin was clammy and very cold. This was death. This was how Daddy had felt. As with him, the gesture of pity was meaningless and irrelevant. There was no more communication in death than there had been in life. She wondered when exactly Bernie had died. No one now would ever know. Perhaps Bernie himself had not known. There must, she supposed, have been one measurable second in time in which he had ceased to be Bernie and had become this unimportant but embarrassingly unwieldy weight of flesh and bone. How odd that a moment of time, so important to him, should pass without his knowledge. Her second foster mother, Mrs. Wilkes, would have said that Bernie did know, that there was a moment of indescribable joy. Shining towers, limitless singing, skies of triumph. Poor Mrs. Wilkes. Widowed, her only son dead in the war, her small house perpetually noisy with the foster children who were her livelihood, she had needed her dreams. She had lived her life by comfortable maxims stored like nuggets of coal against the winter. Cordelia thought of her now for the first time in years and heard again her tired, determinedly cheerful voice. If the Lord doesn't call on his way out, he'll call on his way back. Well, going or coming, he hadn't called on Bernie. It was odd, but somehow typical of Bernie, that he should have retained a dogged and invincible optimism about the business, even when they had nothing in the cash box but a few coins for the gas meter, and yet had given up hope of life without even a struggle. Was it perhaps that he had subconsciously recognized that neither he nor the agency had any real future, and had decided that this way he could yield up both life and livelihood with some honor? He had done it effectively, but messily, surprisingly so for an ex-policeman versed in the ways of death. And then she realized, why had he chosen the razor and the drugs? The gun. He hadn't really taken the easy way out. He could have used the gun, but he wanted her to have it. He had bequeathed it to her together with the rickety filing cabinets, the antique typewriter, the scene of crime kit, the mini, his shockproof and waterproof wristwatch, the blood-soaked rug, the embarrassingly large stock of writing paper with the ornate heading, Pride's Detective Agency. We take pride in our work. All the equipment, he had underlined all. He must have meant to remind her about the gun. She unlocked the small drawer at the base of Bernie's desk, to which only she and he had a key, and drew it out. It was still in the suede drawstring bag, which she had made for it, with 3 rounds of ammunition packed separately. It was a pistol, a .38 semi-automatic. She had never known how Bernie had come by it, but she was certain that he had no license. She had never seen it as a lethal weapon, perhaps because Bernie's boyishly naive obsession with it had reduced it to the impotence of a child's toy. He had taught her to become, at any rate in theory, a creditable shot. They had driven for practice into the depths of Epping Forest, and her memories of the gun were linked with dappled shade and the rich smell of decaying leaves. He had fixed a target to a convenient tree. The gun was loaded with blanks. She could still hear the excited staccato orders. Bend your knees slightly, feet apart, arm full length. Now place the left hand against the barrel, cradling it. Keep your eyes on the target. Arm straight, partner, arm straight. Good. Not bad, not bad, not bad at all. But Bernie, she had said, we can never fire it. We haven't a license. He had smiled, the sly, self-satisfied smile of superior knowledge. If we ever fire in anger, it will be to save our lives. In such an eventuality, the question of a license is irrelevant. He had been pleased with this rotund sentence and had repeated it, lifting his heavy face to the sun like a dog. What, she wondered, had he seen in imagination? The two of them crouching behind a boulder on some desolate moor, bullets pinging against the granite, the gun passed smoking from hand to hand. He had said, we'll have to go carefully with the ammunition. Not that I can't get it, of course. The smile had become grim, as if at the memory of those mysterious contacts, those ubiquitous and obliging acquaintances whom he only had to summon from their shadow world. So he had left her the gun. It had been his most prized possession. She slipped it, still shrouded, into the depths of her shoulder bag. It was surely unlikely that the police would examine the drawers of the desk in a case of obvious suicide, but it was as well to take no risk. Bernie had meant her to have the gun, and she wasn't going to give it up easily. With her bag at her feet, she sat down again by the body. She had a brief convent-taught prayer to the God she wasn't sure existed for the soul which Bernie had never believed he possessed, and waited quietly for the police. The first policeman to arrive was efficient but young, not yet experienced enough to hide his shock and distaste at the sight of violent death, nor his disapproval that Cordelia should be so calm. And I can't finish anymore right now. You'll just have to read the book. Sorry.